Hey, yo! What's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and welcome to Fantasy Pros. I am your host, and that's right. That is truth right now. It is me, it is Dan Harris, and it's you, and we're coming to you live from Fantasy Pros, where fantasy lives, and we got a great MLB show for you today. We got some labor discussion, not like the hard-working kind, like the draft kind. We're going to talk about not my labor draft, but how my labor draft affects you, because nobody cares about my team. We care about yours, and that's what we're trying to do here on the program. We're also going to get into some ADP values. Dan Harris and I have a lot of those, so make sure you stick around. We also might tell you how to win some free swag, and everybody loves free stuff, so stick around for that. And we're going to play a little fantasy or reality. Dan Harris, finally, we had the big over-the-top arm wrestling match, and now here I am in the one chair. You lost. It was best 2 out of 3, so that one that you did beat me, I give you a lot of credit, but it is so great to be doing the show with you today, my friend.
First of all, you are like, I'm drinking coffee right now. If you're watching us on youtube.com/FantasyProsMLB, you can see me drinking my iced coffee every once in a while. I don't need it because you are like a blast of espresso, like
Let's
right
go, baby.
In my face, in the audience's face. I love it. I appreciate that you clearly threw one of our arm wrestling matches because I can't beat my 7-year-old son in an arm wrestling match because you can see my skinny little arms here. But I appreciate it. But yes, I'm happy to turn the host role over to you, and I am ready to go. I am excited. Pitchers and catchers have reported. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
I love it. See, the energy is infectious. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I will say this, too. I'm glad you feel good because I wanted to throw one of them. So you felt good about yourself, so you still felt like you belonged. And I am so happy that you and I are going to be doing baseball together and that you're sticking around. I didn't want you to just go vanish into the shadows, the Fantasy Pros public, all the fans, and you have so many. I know the only fans for Dan Harris. It's a huge website. You're getting a ton of views over there. But seriously, everybody loves you, and Dan is not going away. Clearly, he's right here. You could see his beautiful face, so don't worry about it. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about when I say beautiful face. And he's sticking around, and we're going to do baseball for you, and I'm super excited that he is. But let's get to a little bit of news. Huge free agent signing, a 14-year contract worth $300 million to me from Fantasy Pros. Oh, wait, sorry, it's a typo. It's not to me. It's actually Fernando Tatis Jr., my bad. He gets a full no-trade clause, Harris. He's signing for a bonus north of $10 million. There's no money deferred in the deal. Zero, none. And Tatis Jr. becomes the second MVP Sports client to land a $300 million deal, joining his friend Manny Machado. Spoiler, more Manny Machado stuff later in the show. This is a huge contract. Now, people say when they'll look at the length of the deal, Dan, and they'll say, my God, 14 years. But he had a ton of arbitration years ahead of him, too. So basically, this is like, hey, Manny Machado, you're going to be the face of the Padres. Here's my question for you. Is Fernando Tatis Jr. now the face of baseball?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, Joe, you and I love baseball, right? And we're a little older probably than the target sort of.
I don't know this we you talk about, but sure. I'm listening.
Well, I looked at when that contract's going to be over and how old I'm going to be, and I got really sad. But regardless, MLB needs.
Let's hope that should be a bet. You and I. Will we outlast the Fernando Tatis Jr. contract here at Pros? I think the answer is undoubtedly yes.
Yeah,
so continue.
For sure. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, look, they want to appeal to a younger audience, and it's true. Like, baseball has sort of fallen off in that regard. So I think somebody like Fernando Tatis Jr. is the perfect face of baseball. And to the extent that exists, I remember like 10 years ago or whatever, they had like an actual fan voting contest for who is the face of baseball, and like people tried to tank it, and the finals were David Wright, who we loved, of course, or Eric Sogard was like the other one, and everyone was like Eric Sogard because fans were tanking it. So look, to the extent there is, for me it's still probably Mike Trout, but I think a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr. probably is because he's so young. He's got so much flair. The massive bat flip, right, that everybody has. He's got so much energy. Yeah, I'd say he is at this point. For me, I still maybe think of Trout, but Fernando Tatis Jr. as the face of baseball is probably the perfect representative. So I'll go with yes. How about you?
The only tough thing is that both of those guys are on the West Coast. And for us old guys on the East Coast, sometimes it's tough. Like you don't get to see them a lot. You know, you see them in the interleague play and things like that. It's hard, and I think that's part of kind of, I don't want to say the identity crisis Major League Baseball has at times, but I think moving from Trout, who is an incredible talent, a generational talent, and I don't want to take anything away from Trout, but Tatis has that other thing, that fun to watch factor, that thing that, You don't know what he's going to do, how he's going to do it. He plays the game with flair. He plays it with excitement. And I think that is huge. That is an incredibly important thing that he brings to Major League Baseball as a whole right now. And you saw a little of it last year, and there was that controversy about, it's their unwritten rules of baseball. Ugh. You know what? If they keep up with these unwritten rules of baseball, they're going to end up writing MLB's obituary if they keep up with that.
This is what I don't understand about baseball, because it doesn't seem that hard. And as somebody who loves baseball, and my son loves baseball basically because I force him to, right? Because I talk about it all the time, right? And
eat your vegetables and go watch my track.
We're going to talk about Pristine Auction. They provide a lot of our giveaways that we do. And I just yesterday won a Mike Trout bat because he loves Trout and everything like that for him. But yeah, I don't understand. It's almost, I don't want to use the word deliberate, Joe, but it's like Mike Trout is a generational talent, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, not just of this generation, of all time. And if you're on the East Coast and you're a young kid, you barely know who Mike Trout is. They haven't done any efforts to market him, and they don't seem to take steps to broaden the reach. And you're right, on the West Coast, they have to affirmatively market Tatis Jr., and I think he's the perfect guy to do it with. So I just hope as a baseball fan, that they do take the steps to be like, here's the guy, look at him, everyone. You might want to be like this kid. And by the way, maybe, if you're at that point where you're a teenager and you're thinking about stuff, the fact that a kid who's 22, whatever he is, just got a 14-year, $340 million deal, might want to.
Which is going to look like an incredible value 10 years from now. You're going to look at it and go, oh man, what a steal they got on him, only $300 million.
Kudos to the Padres, by the way. Great. Locked him up. You're absolutely right. And in 14 years, it's going to be like, man, that poor guy is so underpaid. But yeah.
And the Padres have that market all to themselves. Yeah. There's no Chargers anymore. There's no competition. There's no NBA, right? Like, it's just, if you're the Padres, go out there and do it. And there is a little East Coast bias from Dan and I right now, so I'm going to recognize that for everybody listening, saying, stop whining, you East Coast whiny crybabies, you elitists. Yeah. But you know what? If you go back and look at Ken Griffey Jr., who played on the West Coast with the Mariners, there was no problem making him a superstar. Sure. Right? You're absolutely right. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And look, from a fantasy perspective here, I think long-term keeper-wise, you're thrilled because if the Padres have made this kind of investment in Tatis, and you've made this investment in Tatis, turning it back to fantasy here, you got to feel pretty good about that investment. And I think that certainly shows. One more fun fact, which is going to depress you. When this contract is over, Bobby Bonilla will be on his final year getting paid by the Mets. So I wanted to just depress you for a moment here before we get into more stuff.
To be fair, the Bobby Bonilla day is kind of enjoyable at this point, like Schadenfreude a little bit. I can admit, even as Mets fans.
I like the idea that Steve Cohen had of bringing out the giant check and making parading him around the stadium in one of those golf carts with the old hats on them that we used to have in the 70s. I'd love to see that. I think that would be absolutely spectacular.
You got to lean into your failings, man. That's certainly a Harris philosophy. So yeah.
Oh, me too. Oh boy. Wait till we lean into our failings here on this show. It's going to be absolutely glorious. All right. So let's talk a little labor and a little strategy here because, when we have these expert drafts, I'm going to use the air quotes so you can feel them through the podcast airways, but you can see them on our YouTube channel, which, by the way, we have a YouTube channel just for MLB now. Is that correct, Dan Harris?
That is right. In saying this? That was one of, the things. Look, I love, we talked about it. I love baseball. I love our baseball audience. They're really passionate. I wanted a YouTube channel dedicated just to them. That's youtube.com/FantasyPros MLB. We are going to video all our podcasts. We're going to be putting up a lot of videos. We'll give you more information. We're going to have a big live stream fest where we're going to have guests around from all the industry in March, where Joe and I will be there. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, subscribe, like our videos, and if you want to see our beautiful faces, go right there.
All right. And from all these expert drafts, the whole point is that I always say, what you want to do is not get too hung up on this person, that person. There's certain experts that you like or certain people that you seem to have the same vibe about players with. I know when I was starting the business, Scott White was somebody in CBS who I always thought, this guy's got, he and I see players the same. And then little did I know, for 10 years, we'd end up playing in a league together, he and I, when I started reading his columns. So I think that that's always important, but also just kind of what the board looks like. And, the worst thing that people do is they're like, okay, here's my team from the labor draft, or here's my, and everybody does that because it's good content, but I'm more about how does it help you? And in this particular draft, and if you want to hear the full thing, just so you know, Paul Sporer, myself, Justin Basin, ended up having to run a team together, which is absolutely hysterical. It's a 3-hour live stream we did. And it is, as Dan is like, I think maybe a third of the way through it, he's going to actually drive back and forth.
Correct.
From his home to New York.
Correct.
And it's still going to be going, possibly. It's like the Tatis contract. It's just going to go on forever. But the whole point is, we kind of take you through the thought process and where we're going and why and what the board looks like. And Dan, we were in a situation here in the first round. It's a 5x5, 15-team league, very deep, great names, that you are very familiar with if you play fantasy baseball. And what we ended up having was a situation where we wanted to go hitter first, but literally the first 6 hitters that we really wanted, that we all agreed on, all went in a row,
right?
Which left us no choice but to kind of go pivot to pitcher. And we went with Jacob deGrom first. And it's funny because in a points league mock I did last night with the ITL boys, we ended up going 1, 2, 3, all pitchers in the top. And in both teams, I actually think you can make up that deficit. So are you somebody, when you're looking at this board so far this year, and we'll get to how you make up the deficit in hitting later on, that you feel like maybe in that middle, taking the pitcher in the 7, 8, somewhere in that range actually ends up kind of at least solidifying one ace that you feel really good about, you can back up relatively soon, because after that, pitching really does fall off a cliff this year.
Yeah, so we did a mock yesterday on yesterday's podcast, so everybody should listen to that about the way it goes. But absolutely, and it was funny to listen to you guys. Again, you did a podcast and a live stream on, so everybody could see. And it's funny, if you ever worry about yourself as a fantasy manager, listen to the way Joe and Mason and Spore break down their picks, because they're debating and they're panicking like every other fantasy manager when it comes there, when people snipe their picks. You guys at 7 were thinking about taking one of the 6 hitters. And again, the top 5, I think, are pretty standard in Roto, right? With Tatis, Betts, Acuna, Trout, and Soto. After that, maybe the pitchers start going, maybe Trea Turner, and he was the guy who went 6. I think that you guys did it exactly how I would have done it, which is once I actually have deGrom, I believe, on my Roto board anyway, deGrom and Cole above Turner. Those are the top 8, though, or whatever it is.
Well, I am not a Trea Turner guy either. Just put it
I know
out.
Mason
I was outbid 2-on-1
Yep.
on that one. But you know what? That was our rule. We said 2-1. We're not going to put up a fight. We'll make it work. And I get the love for Trea Turner. It's just for me personally, when I build the structure of my team, it's not enough power to start off with. It's not enough of an advantage. It's an advantage with stolen bases, but in terms of what else he can offer, I think there's certain limitations he has just because he hasn't had a 30-30 season.
It's true. He did have a really phenomenal year last year in the shortened season, and he does have he's got a 60 steal season waiting to happen if he ever really wants it.
Well, I'm still waiting for it.
It's true, and it hasn't. When he first came up, right, he's on like a 75 stolen base, pace, and we're like, all right, there we go. This is what we're gonna see, and he's sort of more settled into like 30 to 40 for the most part when he's healthy. But it's there. Stolen bases are largely a product of desire, so he can get there if he absolutely wants. I'm fine. I
like that. The stolen bases are a product of desire.
They are, right? Not
it's
for
like
me.
a Daniel Steele novel.
If I were,
it's like, are stolen bases your passion, your desire?
Within certain limitations, of course. If I were a Major League Baseball player, I could have all the desire I want. I would go 0 for 50 in steals. I promise you that. But Trea Turner, a guy with his speed, a guy with his base running acumen, he can do it if he wants. It's a matter of, but it adds injury risk. Like, look, you look at Trout, right? Everybody's kind of writing off his steals because he stole 1 in 2 attempts last year and only 11 the year before. But he's had these years where it's bounced back and forth, where he went 11, 16, then he bounced up to 30, right? And then back down to 24. You can do it if you want. For me, a guy like Turner who solidifies batting average and steals, 2 very difficult categories, I don't mind taking him early. With that said, I do think, look, you got to go pitcher heavy, in my opinion. And I'm looking at the board for LABR. This is sort of what I did because I have the entire draft board here. And there were a lot of guys who ignored pitching early more than I thought. The first couple of guys in particular, they really did not go heavy on pitching.
Oh, and it cost them. It cost them dearly.
Huge. It cost them huge. So
they can't compete in pitching now.
This is
for the
what
most part.
That's exactly what I think. We could talk a little bit about those teams just so fantasy managers can see what it looks like when you don't. Now it's a 15-team league, right? It's harder sort of to make it work, but there was that huge run on pitching in the second. So for me, I like taking deGrom. I like taking Cole. I'm even okay with Bieber. He's like tier 1A to me. I think those first 2 guys are tier 1, right? 1A, but a tier unto himself. In the first round, though, totally fine with it. I would have done the exact same thing you guys did, and I do think that works. And you can see, by the way, Allen Harrison, who was pick 1, Scott Pianowski and Ray Flowers, who really didn't go heavy on pitching until later.
Ray was able to at least solidify Corbin Burns and Greinke, yes, which to me is at least competitive. My problem is where Pianowski took Kershaw and then waited so long. The next starter he took was round 11, which was Kevin Gausman.
Right.
And my whole theory is this. So you are now banking an entire rotation over 162 games over Kevin Gausman's one good short sample,
yep,
and Clayton Kershaw's back.
Yep.
That is difficult. That's a tough sell for me personally. I just don't want to do it. Could he be right? Of course. That's why we play out the leagues. It's not theoretical. This is actual. So this is not a mock. We're actually trying to win this league. And I mean, we don't get a cool belt or anything like that, or even a bobblehead for winning these leagues. It would be nice. I just want something. I want kind of tchotchke.
If you win, I will send you a bobblehead. How about that? Just a personal bobblehead. All right. If you win LABR,
a bobblehead of you?
Yes.
Or a bobblehead of me?
Of me. That's what you want, right?
Even better.
All right.
Oh my God, the Dan Harris bobblehead would go right behind me for every single show.
Yeah.
And would ratings just boom.
It would be amazing.
What was amazing too is that you see as this first round goes on, you see how the pitching. People are recognizing this.
Yes.
And I think this is another trend number 2 that I want to discuss here for everybody else. Again, 15-team league, so it's a little exasperated. But at the same time, Dan, what you're seeing is everybody in the high-tier expert realm recognizes this cliff of pitching. And the cliff of pitching is twofold. It's the injuries, but it's also 2020, the COVID season, the uncertainty of innings.
Yeah.
And I continue, and I talked about it on the show with you yesterday with Andrew, and I'm probably going to reiterate it here again today, which is what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we have guys that we know have 175, 180 innings in their tank because we've seen it before. It would be great if Jesus Luzardo and Sixto Sanchez and those guys make that jump.
Yeah.
But not all of them are going to, and not all of them are going to be successful over that entire realm, which is why I think the guys like Charlie Morton, I think some of the guys like Lance Lynn that you could depend on, there's some names, Zach Greinke, I think they're better investments this year in terms of pitching, and I just want to put that out there for people, that if you can solidify a few of those veteran guys that maybe don't have the upside, but at least you feel good about what they can bring, I think it will serve your rotation better over this 6-month season because nobody knows for sure how anyone's going to react. But if I'm going to flip that coin, I'm going to flip it on the side of the veterans.
So I think there are 2 ways to think about it in my mind. And it's one of the reasons why I do like Cole and I do like DeGrom early because I do think you can rely on them for innings. I've been thinking a lot about a guy like Scherzer who, despite the fact that there are, cracks and stuff like that, the bottom line is when you have a guy who's his age, 37 or whatever he is, and he has so many innings on him, the Nationals are not like, you know what, Scherzer's got 6 years left. We don't want to, take any, Scherzer's going to go out there and he's probably going to be a horse, right? You're not going to have too many innings concerns absent injury with a guy like Scherzer, a veteran pitcher who has done it before and stuff like that. Those guys like Lynn also, again, who led the league last year in innings, even though it was only 84, they do take on added value. At the same time, the other way to think of it, Joe, is that for the most part, those guys are going to be a little bit of unicorns, right? There aren't going to be that many 200-inning guys because you just can't do that after throwing so few innings last year. And that kind of levels the playing field a little bit, where I do think once you get past solidifying your rotation at the top, you can sort of think more about the ratios and the numbers that guys are going to put up without worrying too much about innings, because once you get past those guaranteed guys, the innings aren't going to be there really for anyone. So I do
they're not.
Right?
But what you don't want to do is rely on the other guys to provide you the baseline.
Correct. That's right.
That's the ultimate, I think, setting yourself up for failure this year. And then the most important thing then becomes when you do take a pitcher in the first round, or let's say you go back-to-back pitcher, which it's funny, nobody went back-to-back pitcher except for Dr. Roto, who went Bieber Bueller. That was the only team that did the pocket aces, right?
Yep.
So, and that's perfectly fine. But here's the thing where if you look at the rest of his
that's right.
offense, Whit Merrifield, Luis Robert, Keston Hiura, Austin Meadows. Now, we started with a pitcher, and we did back it up with Lance Lynn. But we came away with Eloy Jimenez, Kyle Tucker, Brandon Lau, and what I want to talk about
of course,
is a utility boy, which is Nelson Cruz. Old man Nelson Cruz. Still getting it done. And we actually, and I don't know if you've gotten to this point in that long-form podcast.
Not yet.
But the discussion about, okay, we got JD Martinez, we have Jordan Alvarez, and we have Nelson Cruz. We have 3 outs to get one of those guys for our utility spot and boost up the offense with a guy who's going to be a 280 hitter maybe. We hope again. Obviously there's some questions with JD, some questions with Alvarez, some questions with Cruz because he's 112 years old. That's fine. But at the same time, it's like we know what the potential is of those guys. And to get a value like that in the 6th round, that's a 2nd round grade in terms of offensive stats, right?
Yep.
And that's how you make it up. And people would say, well, why would you want to take a utility guy and lock yourself in? And I have this argument all the time, Dan, and I always put this out to people. This is a good thing. You're not just locking it in. You're locking in awesome. You're locking in great potential productivity. That's a good thing. That's going to be an RPV, a relative position value advantage compared to your peers at that utility spot. Because most of the time, people end up running this carousel of jabronis all over the place in the utility spots, trying to find somebody who's decent that week and play matchups. We're going to have Nelson Cruz, a guy in the middle of the order who could drive in 100 runs and hit 35 bombs. And that, to me, is always, if you're going to start and you're worried about it, and you go, oh my God, my offense, that's your immediate pivot. Even if you have to go a little bit early to take one of those guys, I would do it. Because yes, you're locking in the utility spot, but you're basically making up some power. So is that also a strategy you like to implement if you're going pitcher early?
For sure. And again, there are a lot of these bats, and we talked about Cruz a little bit yesterday on the mock draft. Just, in 6 years, when he's 110 years old, we'll be talking about how he's still undervalued in drafts, because that's just what it is. People don't want to go because he's utility only. I have no problems with JD Martinez. This is one of those things where we got to figure out what does 2020 mean, and I think for JD Martinez, it means nothing. I think the lack of video really threw him off. I'm willing to almost throw it out entirely. Alvarez, which, by the way, I still don't know if it's Jordan or Jordan, because I hear it both ways. Even
I like
now.
to say Jordan Alvarez.
That's fine.
I like to say it like that.
On the broadcast, I hear it both ways, so I'm just going to call him Alvarez. There's a little different there because he's got.
Don't call him Pedro Alvarez, and people get confused when you do that.
That's a little different. I agree, but he's got the double knee surgery, so there's a little more question marks there. But absolutely. And look, you talked about it. Dr. Roto, okay, he went. I like what you guys did, which is I like to get a loose rule, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, 2 starting pitchers in the first 4 rounds. Okay, I have a top 22. I think that's my cutoff where I really want at least 2 of those guys, maybe 3 if I could get it, because I want to solidify the rotation. But you can't ignore power after that. And, you mentioned Dr. Roto's team. Bieber and Buehler, a phenomenal 1-2 punch, absolutely. But then Whit Merrifield, who I love as a player.
Oh, absolutely. I love Whit Merrifield.
But I don't. And Luis Robert, fine. I mean, he is going to hit for power. But then again, Keston Hiura, Austin Meadows. He then went with Matt Olson, so that's sort of your power bat. But after that, he went back to pitcher. McCullers, Pablo Lopez. You look at the rest of his lineup, like there just isn't, like there's power
not enough
base
to be. And when you think you have enough power, you still need more.
Yeah,
right now.
Absolutely.
That's the other thing you have to take away. And one more thing before we leave this here and move on is the outfield. Also, you see us hitting outfield early and often. Outfield also falls off a cliff, and it's something that in these 5 active outfielder leagues, even in 12 teams like we did this week, we talked about it. It gets exasperated in the 15 team league. If you're playing in deeper leagues, 12 or more, this is a very different window and a very different player pool, and you have to recognize it. And that's why RPV is helpful, because it tells you like where it bottoms out. But you can see our first 4 picks were pitchers and outfielders, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? It served us better, because later on we were able to get guys like Muncy. We were able to get guys that we could fill in like a Brian Hayes. We took a shot on Trey Mancini and Jorge Polanco later. We found guys. You can find the Gene Seguras of the world that will just fill the box score a little bit. They won't be spectacular, but they're good major leaguers. It's tougher when you get into that 3rd, 4th, 5th outfield pool. It is a lot harder because, again, a lot of unknowns. It's a very big transition year. So hopefully that kind of helps in terms, and you can obviously go out and check out the entire LABR draft. If you put LABR, LABR into Twitter and search it, you'll get the results there. And I think I tweeted them out too, so you could just go check on Joe Pisapia 17, and you can see that if you want to peel in and see what you can glean from that. Now,
well, before we go on, Joe, I do want to say one thing. It is something that I learned yesterday during our mock, and you pointed out, which you obviously knew, and I hear you guys talking about it when you're making your picks. It's that I don't think I realized how thin outfield got, like later on in the draft. It really is something where I'm going to put more of a premium on it in my drafts going forward a little bit earlier, because yesterday I waited, on outfield, and I was like, whatever, I'll make it up later. And then at one point I looked, I don't know, we're in like round 10 or 11.
Can't make it up.
And I'm like,
can't be made
where
up.
is it? And by the way, I will say, like, this is why doing Joe, this is a real draft, LABR that they're playing on, everything like that. But do mock drafts on fantasypros.com/draftwizard. Do as many, it takes you 10 minutes. Do as many mocks as you can. You'll see if you don't focus on outfield, your team is not going to come, across as well as you want it to. So do a lot of those things. You will realize where the holes are, where you need to focus. So that's just my little thing there, because it was something that I really did learn yesterday through that process.
You see it in practice. Yep. It changes your whole perspective.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, the perspective of the Padres is a little different right now with the long-term Fernando Tatis Jr. He's going to be playing aside Manny Machado for a long time. So that's good for both of their values. And guess what? You have a chance to get a Manny Machado signed jersey. That's right. So, pristineauction.com is at it again. We want you to go to fantasypros.com/MLB contest. Again, that's fantasypros.com/MLB contest. And what you're going to do is you go to any place where you listen to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, and you give us a review, a good one, hopefully, but you give us a review there, you screenshot that, and then you go over to fantasypros.com/MLB contest, and what you can do is you drop that screenshot in, fill out this little form, and you are entered in automatically then to give us a chance, or give you a chance to win a Manny Machado signed jersey. You can even go to our YouTube channel. Also, that's eligible for prizes as well. Now, you don't have too much time to do this. February 28th at 11:59 p.m.
Correct.
That's when Manny Machado's jersey turns into a pumpkin. You can't get it anymore. But again, this is your chance, and our friends at Pristine Auction are putting this out there for you. So go drop a review of how much you love the Fantasy Pros podcast, or even our new MLB channel over on YouTube on Fantasy Pros MLB. And honestly, you get some free swag. Everybody loves free stuff, and that Manny Machado stock's going through the roof.
Yep.
So go out and do that. Again, just a screenshot is all you need, and you could be entered, and we will have that, I believe, like March 1st or so, we'll have the announcement of that?
By the way, also, when you enter, check your spam email, because we randomly draw the winner, and then we email that person just to make sure that they are, want the jersey and everything like that. Also, by the way, entry into any contest, you're automatically entered into all future contests, and we're basically going to be doing this every month. So if you leave a review, you love Manny Machado, you don't win the jersey, whatever we have going on, and we're going to have a lot of stuff. We are friends at Pristine Auction. They have amazing stuff over there. We're going to be doing this all year long. So entry into one contest, entry into all future contests. So again, leave a review. And let's go. It's the best. FantasyPros.com /MLB contest. I love it.
Here's my review. Dan and Joe are so cool. I love this show so much. Boom, there you go.
You're also not eligible.
How easy is that?
You're not eligible to win the jersey. I'm sorry. Alex Fast tried to get it, and I was like, sorry, man. I know. I get it. You love Machado. That doesn't work.
Yeah, I can't review my own podcast.
Doesn't work.
That's not cool.
No way.
That's bad form.
No way.
All right, what's good form is finding you some value. So Dan and I have each put out 5 guys apiece. We'll do a little countdown here of how we can make up some deficits. And it was a little mix here. We each have a pitcher, I believe, in our list there. I think you have a reliever there as well.
Yep.
And here's some guys that just to keep in mind of bonus guys. Now, I'm not one for taking, huge upside guys who don't have a lot of track record too early. I like to build my team with some known entities, or at least ones I feel really confident in. And then these are the guys that are, kind of in that 100 and up range. I know I've gone more in the 200 range than Dan, but I play in really super deep, manly leagues.
I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of differentiation when they're thinking about players.
I know. You're so good to have
I am. I'm just
all right,
wonderful.
So why don't we start with your number 5 here? Who is number 5 on your list?
All right. I'm going to start with, I'm trying to see, maybe I'll work my way down. Like I'll work my way from the highest or the best ADP and work my way down, because there's not as much of a discount here.
I think that's the way to go.
All right, cool.
I will do the same.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to start with the guy who, man, I don't really like to defend, because it's not like I'm super high on this guy, but I'm looking at my rankings and I'm comparing them to ADP. And Joe, I know I don't think you have rankings on our site or anything like that, but you have done 8,000 drafts, so you know where you think the values are. These are guys.
Not 1,000.
Who,
like 800.
7,000. That's fine. Who I have higher than what their ADP is. And again, we have ADP on our site. If you go to our just MLB rankings page, you can go to ADP. You get the average across a bunch of sites. So it's Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who has an ADP of 91, perfectly acceptable. I'm 75th. Now, part of it, I think, is that I just kind of want a piece of the Jays lineup wherever I can get it. But
sure.
I don't love Gurriel, right? I was like, oh, why am I higher on him than ADP? I don't love him. Like, he's a solid player over a full season. He'll probably, hit 25 homers, maybe 30. He'll steal probably double-digit bags. Like, nothing crazy. A benefit in batting average. Most likely. I think really, Joe, what it was is when I looked at the hitters in front of him, like me personally, I'm taking Gurriel over them. Like Ketel Marte, I'm just not a fan of Ketel Marte. I know he had the
He
giant.
burned a lot of people last year.
Yeah.
I mean, again, giant small sample size, as my boy Casey Bubble likes to point out, but still burned a lot of guys with that power just completely evaporated.
And I'm not willing to basically, again, parsing 2020 is the most difficult thing we're going to be doing. As
you almost want to throw it away, but you can't throw it out completely.
But I don't want to give him full credit for what he did in 2019, which was totally out of character, right?
But you know what? It wasn't totally, because the second half of 2018,
yes,
he actually did trend in that direction. And I actually wrote a piece about a few guys, 3 of them in 2018. This is true. These are the 3 guys who I thought were going to have huge 2019 seasons. Ketel Marte, Hyunjin Ryu, who was with the Dodgers that year, and the third one was Marcus Semien. Guys who had incredible finishes where they just, like, something clicked and it just looked so good. And I said, these are all guys I'm investing in 2019. Y'all should be doing it too. They all worked out. But what's ironic is, of those guys, only Ryu kept it going in 2020.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, what do you do when you have these guys who make these changes? Like, Semien started all of a sudden, like, you're not chasing, you're not striking out whatsoever. And then last year, you're like, do I discount it, or do I credit the fact that it looks a whole lot like every other year of his career other than the 2019 season? It's really difficult to know. For me, a guy like Ketel Marte, I wasn't fully buying into what we saw in 2019. So I'm not going to completely write him off based on what we saw last year, but I'm also I will just take a guy who's safe like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. And for me, again, what I want, if you're going to give me a guy who, he's not going to be a superstar in any category, right? But if you're telling me that I can get a guy in whatever round that is, 6 or 7, who basically is like double-digit steals probably, a batting average, which, again, we talked about, Joe. It's hard to fill that category. Like, he's probably going to give you a nice floor and batting average. He's probably going to give you 25 home runs wherever they play. We learned today officially that they're not going to play in Toronto until at least May, at the very least. But their park that they're going to play in should also be a hitter's park. I'm taking Gurriel over Marte. I'm taking him probably over Matt Olson because, again, we talked about it yesterday on the mock that I'll wait and take Miguel Sano probably for that unless I desperately need power. Austin Meadows comes with his whole own host of questions that he's got from last year, which you can write off because of the COVID concerns, but also does the fact that he played like this, and did so poorly against lefties again, does that give the Rays the opportunity to platoon him if they absolutely want? Max Fried, I don't love this year, so I'm probably not going after him. So for me, I'm not crazy about Gurriel. I'm not trying to justify basically being like reach for this guy, but he's a guy who I'm a little more willing to take earlier than he's going in the ADP.
Good player in a potentially great lineup is a fantasy value. And I just want to point that out there. Plus, he also plays what? Outfield.
Yep.
So when we're trying to make up that deficit where you're like, oh my goodness, where's outfield going? Gurriel's a perfect guy right around that 100 ADP. And obviously Dan's got him ranked higher than that. But I think that's something to circle because you're always looking for the guys you can make up the deficits with and continue to stay above the fantasy league average. I'm going to start at 186, and it's Trey Mancini. Now, depending on your league, outfield, maybe first base too, but he's probably going to play first base. So by the time you roll at the end of April, he's going to have that eligibility also. So I wouldn't, pout too much about it. But there's not a lot of guys going around 200 that have the ceiling of a 30 home run guy with a 280 plus batting average and 100 runs and 100 RBI in a great situation in terms of home ballpark factor and the East in general. It's a really hitter friendly environment for the most part. So there's a risk. But so far, he's healthy. He's already reported to camp. Everything seems like it's going in the right direction. And I'm telling you right now, this ADP is at 186. If he has a couple spring training bombs, this ADP is going to go in the top 100. I'm telling you, it's going to jump that many spots. So if you're drafting early, I would take the shot here. Now, you can make the argument as you get closer to draft, if it does start to go up too high, maybe you do pump the brakes a little bit, but I am not pumping the brakes. I'm driving the Trey Mancini train, and he's one of my people. Trey Mancini, how you doing? And I'm telling you right now, this guy just has way too much talent. He's still young enough. And look, he's also in a spot where he plays his way out of Baltimore possibly this year. Yeah. And that's also something to consider as well. So Mancini at 186 is my 5. Who is your number 4, Dan Harris?
All right. Before I go on, I do want to say with Mancini, I'm in your corner. I don't know if he's going to get within the top 100. That's aggressive, Joe. But I will say that when you think about guys who's 29.
Matt Olson hasn't had a season as good as Trey Mancini has.
All right. So when you want to discount, right, the big 20, like I'm like Ketel Marte, I don't know. I don't really know if I buy that 2019 season. With Mancini, nothing was really different. He's been a good player his whole career. Like maybe walked a little more.
Good player in the minor leagues too. Yeah,
but no big changes. So I find it legitimate what he did. So I'm with you. I have him higher than ADP as well. I'm going to go with another first baseman. I think. Let me see. Yeah, I'll go with him. I'll go with Rhys Hoskins, who's a guy who I love.
What are you twisting your own arm?
I'm
there?
just trying to find the most optimal order that I could go in. I'll go with Rhys Hoskins. ADP
it's backwards of how we put them in. See, if you're on the show sheet, then you'd see that.
That's true. It's my bad. I want to go backwards.
Wink.
There's also a show sheet now, which I love. ADP of 165. I've got him 134. So here's what I thought. I looked back at what I thought about him last year. And so what I basically said is he was hit by a pitch, but coming in. So this is 2019. What I said about him coming in 2020. Hit by a pitch on his hand on August 14th. His slash line before he got hit by a pitch, okay, which derailed his season in my opinion, 241, 381, 45. Perfectly respectable, very in line with what you think of, right, when you think of Hoskins. After that, it was 182, 312, 364. So I said, okay, I don't think he's going to hit 229. I could see him getting back to being like a above 30 homer, like, 240, 250 average. So I bought it. I liked him last year. And remember, before the injury, 241, 381, 45. Last year, 245, 384, 503. Looks exactly like it, right? That's what he is. He was on a 40 homer, 140 run, 100 RBI pace. But he got injured, had elbow surgery. So this is another one, Joe, where I think depending on how he looks in the spring, his ADP might rise. Although nobody likes Rhys Hoskins. They just are like, nah, whatever, Rhys Hoskins. Look, he is a guy who, in my opinion, can be a 240, 250 bat. Not great with the batting average, but he's got 40 homer pop, without a doubt, in that park, in a pretty solid lineup. And he was given a 4 to 6 month timetable. That should mean that he's ready for opening day. If he looks good in the spring, I'm all over him. For now, I'm willing to take the risk. So Rhys Hoskins is a guy who I draft in a lot of places and I think is a value at 165.
I think what's happening with Rhys Hoskins is he didn't become the superstar that he was hyped to be.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean he can't be a very useful player. It doesn't mean he's not a very good return on investment at the 150 range, just kind of splitting the difference between your ADP and actual ADP on FantasyPros.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Draft him for the power. What if he does evolve into that guy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's upside still there, but there's also a baseline of the power, which is terrific. So that's the problem is, people have a picture of a player in their head and then they get hyped, especially the guy who performs right away, and then they sour.
Right.
And meanwhile, that player is just continuing their development. They don't realize a guy's still 25, 26 years old, continuing that development. And the peak of a Major League Baseball player is actually somewhere between the ages of 28 and 31. Those are the best years of most Major League players. Some people say, well, it's 26, 27, and it's starting to skew a little bit younger.
Sure.
But if you look at it generally speaking, it's around that 28 to 31 range where you're getting the best version of that guy. So in keeper leagues, you still have some time and some room to grow with Hoskins, so don't freak out. He could improve even further potentially.
And by the way, first base isn't like super deep. It's not like first base.
Oh no, first base is another one.
Yeah.
Look, there's the elite group, and then there's a really nice 1A tier where you have the Goldschmidts of the world.
Yep. You love Paul Goldschmidt this year, by the way. Oh,
why? He's got Nolan Arenado hitting with him. When in Paul Goldschmidt's career has he had anyone as good as Nolan Arenado?
That's fine, but this isn't the Paul Goldschmidt of old, right?
I know, but I'm not saying he's the Paul Goldschmidt old where he's stealing 20 bags and things like that too. But this is the Paul Goldschmidt with lineup protection, which could get closer to the Paul Goldschmidt of old, at least from the power standpoint. I'm just saying, people completely underestimate how important lineup protection is. And how people will just pitch around guys who, like Paul Goldschmidt's a Miliota. Like, I'm gonna let Harrison Bader beat me. I'm not gonna let Paul Goldschmidt beat me. That's the mentality when you can't do that. And I think that changes dramatically where things go. And you look, see in the past, like, it's just true. Go look at some of these careers, some of these guys when they did have lineup protection, when they didn't. Look at Mookie Betts the year that David Ortiz was hurt. Look at what happened to Mookie Betts. Yeah,
but I mean, all right, we don't have to go like off on this tangent right now.
We just tangented.
All right, it's fine. We can tangent. It's fine. And disagreement is good. I mean, it is good. Look, I mean, so you're just basically like, all right, Goldschmidt hit 6 home runs last year, and lineup protection, he's going to get back into the 35 homer range. Is that what you're thinking at this point?
I'm saying there's that potential, but what I'm saying is the floor is so solid that now when you're adding in lineup protection, you're getting Goldschmidt at a discount, and there is actually, I think, slightly more upside left to Goldschmidt now than there was there in previous seasons. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, for me, I love Paul Goldschmidt as a player.
Doesn't sound like you do.
Well,
doesn't sound like you love him enough. I don't think you love him enough.
I love him a lot. I'll
love him enough for both of us.
You will. Look, the bottom line is the steals are gone. That was a big part of Goldschmidt's value coming in, and the batting average has kind of fluctuated and bounced back last year. But I mean, he's gonna be 34 before this year. I'm not willing to just basically be like, ooh, I'm all back in on him because they signed Nolan Arenado. I mean, I don't mind him. I like him more than Rhys Hoskins, of course. But this is just, we've done a couple podcasts together, and it's like the 8th mention of Paul Goldschmidt. I heard you talking about it with Mason and Sporer on your breakdown of LABR. How you're looking at it.
Look, you want Anthony Rizzo with a sinking ship, or you want Paul Goldschmidt with a team that's looking to win the division?
And it is funny because this is interesting in the difference, I think, of how we look at lineup protection. Sure. Do you care about it for Jose Ramirez? Do you care about the fact that,
Jose Ramirez has more of it than people realize.
Well, when they signed Eddie Rosario,
Eddie Rosario and Franmil Reyes, that's some guys that you have to be. Those guys can beat you.
Isn't Franmil?
And major league pitchers know.
Yeah.
No, Franmil was there.
Yeah, no, I know. But it was like, were you concerned about that before Rosario?
Slightly. You see in the very first, that 30-second mock we did with Steve Gardner, that was the insanity, which, by the way, somebody just tweeted at me the other day. They said, I just listened to the mock you guys did yesterday, and then I went back to listen to the 30-second one, and I was basically like peeing my pants. It was so funny. Like, listen to you guys trying to take guys. Yeah. But you see, when Lindor went of it that first time, when he was gone, all of a sudden Jose Ramirez stock drop. Then Eddie Rosario goes up just a tick. And look, I think somewhere in between is probably the right answer.
Yeah.
And that's fair. So yes, I am a big fan of lineup protection personally. And you can look at the evolution of JD Martinez, who floundered in Houston, where there was nobody to protect the young.
Yeah, but Martinez was much more about a swing change for me. He went to the famed hitting coach or whatever and changed it to Justin Turner sort of thing. For me, it was less about lineup protection, more about the fact that he changed his entire approach. And for me, again, it is something where I don't think
approach is a great change, but you know what else is great? Seeing fastballs.
All right, you know what? That is fair. That's fine. But all right, this is good. But
when Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez are behind you. All right, we got to go.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go to your next.
We've gotten two guys out here.
It's my fault. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's all everyone blame Dan. Okay. Eduardo Rodriguez, ADP 188. Yes, there's risk, but we're talking almost 200, and I'm telling you, the pitching around 200 is not pretty.
Yeah.
So, short story is this. Eduardo Rodriguez is a guy that is going to give you big-time strikeout potential. We're talking 9K per 9 and above. He did have a 200-inning season in 2019. Let's not lose sight of that. Is he perfect? No. But his ERA was very consistent. It was in that 3.8 range. The FIP was around 3.6, 3.8 in that time. So this is pretty much who he is. Last year, he responded poorly after he got COVID. He really struggled with it. All reports so far are very good.
Yeah.
So I will buy back in here early at this ADP. As it starts to tick up, as he starts to make some starts, that might change my tune. But right now, early drafting, I like him. Who's next on your list?
Yeah, I'll second that, by the way. I do like Eduardo Rodriguez because, again, like I've said, you don't have to shoot the moon on every pick. Right. When you get to that point. You know what Rodriguez is going to give you, assuming that he's fully recovered from the heart issues from COVID-19, is a great pick. So I, too, am willing to buy in, as I am with the guy who you picked in yesterday's mock, Kirby Yates. We talked about, the closer situation this year. We say it every year, but this year is like for reals bad. He's ADP 167. I have him 135 overall. And this is just a little bit, Joe, as we talked about in yesterday's mock, of bumping up the reliable closers, which, by the way, I think Yates is. I mean, he was basically the dominant reliever in the game from 2018 to 2019. His splitter is absolutely awesome. He's a two-pitch pitcher, but you get away with that as a closer, absolutely. And again, last year was a disaster, and he winds up having elbow surgery. That's fine. So again, I think a lot of the guys we're talking about, Joe, fall into the same thing, which is like, okay, once you see them healthy in spring training, their ADPs are going to shoot right up off the charts, right? And so for me, he's going to be the closer. He's one of the very, very few reliable closers, assuming that he is healthy. All reports are good right now. He's going to be one of the better closers drafted. I would rather draft them earlier rather than later. So Kirby Yates is a guy for me. Overall, I'm taking earlier because I want to lock in that top closer for me that I feel a little better about.
You know what I like about Yates is he's going in the tier of closers in that mid-range tier that don't have nearly the same peripherals upside.
Absolutely.
They don't have nearly the same low whip ERA, high strikeout combination that Yates potentially has. So if I'm going to roll the dice on somebody in the mid-tier, which is something I typically don't like to do, I'll go for somebody at the top, or I'm just going to let it come to me and just take the bottom feeder guys and just saves or saves, who cares, and I'll deal with everything else, because if I did my job properly and I took a really good starting pitching crop, then I can handle some of the bad innings I'm going to get from some of the closers. But Kirby Yates is that one guy right there. He's like a little diamond where there's potential there, there's risk, but he's going in a tier where it's safer. Andrew Benintendi, ADP 201 for me. I've done this now a few times already, and I believe he's on our LABR roster, if memory serves as well. I could be wrong about that. Like, I've done so many drafts in
Right.
the last couple of days.
Yep.
But now, did we get Bennett? No, we did not. It was in the other one that I did with you guys too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Benintendi to me, and I think we had our eye on him, and then he probably got sniped by us.
Right.
Somebody. So Banjo Benintendi, look, it's not going to cost you anything to find out. He's still young. He's still way south of 30. He has sometimes, I think, a change of scenery is just good for people. The Royals are not a bad team. Like, the Royals have Merrifield. If Soler bounces back, they have Salvador Perez. They have Hunter Dozier. They just added Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
It's a sneaky little offseason here where I think that offense is going to be more competitive. They might not win a whole lot more games, but I think what they're going to be is a little bit more competitive. And from an offensive standpoint, you're taking him, yes, out of a really good hitter environment and all that stuff. But you know what? Sometimes it's a mental thing. And I think just putting him in a better place where you say, hey, man, just go out there and be you. You don't have the Boston media up your you know what. You don't have to worry about things. And if he should even find something close to 15-15, let's set the bar really low.
Yeah.
Let's say he's a 15-15 player at 201
Yeah.
in a 5x5, and that's a lot of numbers I realize I just said in a row. He's a good pick.
So where, out of curiosity, Joe, because I don't have him I like him. I like what you're talking about, and I think he's a great. I mean, you look at him. This is somebody who you can very easily see what happened, which is that seems like he just got pretty homer happy. Like, his launch angle went from like very normal to 17.3 degrees and 20. Like, this is just like, oh, are you trying to hit home runs? Which that's not your game, dude. Like,
No,
you don't
it's
need
not.
to do that.
He's a doubles hitter,
correct
with speed.
Yeah,
that's who he is, and that's who he should be. And if the Royals can get him. And the Royals have done a great job. I mean, just look at the career of Whit Merrifield, right?
Yes.
Whit Merrifield was a player who was left for dead in the minor leagues.
Yep.
They basically came in there, made some adjustments to him, and he has been a house on fire ever since. So if they can take that Whit Merrifield approach with Benintendi, that could bode very well for him in this value.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not taking him that early. How early would you take him roughly, Joe? Like, do you think, like, are you like 20 spots ahead of his ADP, or where you like him at his ADP and you just think that's a value?
Here's the thing. In 5x5, he does have a little bit more stolen base potential there. So, again, I'm not going to glean too much from 2020. I really don't care about it too much when it comes to this guy because we've already seen him have pretty long, successful, sustained. He had 2 really good seasons and then 2 seasons that have been not so good. Let's put it mildly. But he's too young to just give up on. So I think considering he's an outfielder, I'm willing to go a few spots ahead. And considering that he has power speed combination, I'm willing to go a few spots ahead.
Yeah.
Because it's that same area where you're looking at a guy like, let's say, Lorenzo Cain, right?
Yeah.
Hitting at the top of the order. Power ceiling's probably 1 in a dozen home runs, but
Yep.
hopefully he's going to steal 20 bases. Well, okay, Benintendi can do probably that same thing, and he probably has a higher power ceiling than Lorenzo Cain. So it all depends on where he hits in the order, too, which we'll find out soon.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's a great bounce back candidate. I think he is a guy who change of scenery can make a real difference. Right now, I'm slightly ahead of ADP, but I could see moving him up if he has a big spring. My next guy is also an outfielder and a guy you drafted yesterday, and we kind of talked about briefly, and it's Victor Robles, who's at 183 ADP. I'm 154. Look, if you want really quality contact, you are looking in the wrong place, okay? Victor Robles makes like notoriously weak contact. Now, you can live with that if he's going to go, all right, I'm going to have terrible contact, but I'm going to have 17 home runs and 28 stolen bases like he did in 2019. You can live with that. What he did last year was like historically terrible. A 1.7% barrel rate, a 22.9% hard hit rate. That's just ridiculous. The major league average is 34.9% hard hit rate. He is 12% below that last year. That maybe is not going to fly, but I think, again, this is where one of the things where I don't want to get too crazy over 2020 because he gained a little weight. It looked like he tried to hit for more power, but I assume
who didn't gain weight over quarantine?
I mean, Gleyber Torres, right? You love Gleyber Torres. I'm right there with you, right? He was great coming into spring. You had the 2-month sort of off, and he got a little pudgy. So
everything got weird, man. Stuff got weird. 2020 was weird. We were watching Tiger King. A lot of things were weird.
Tiger King. That's the good stuff. Okay,
remember that
so
happened?
I do remember that. Look, he's still, bottom line is this. You've seen him do fine with normal poor contact. If he's going to basically be a 15-30 guy, which he absolutely can, he's still fast. He was 79th percentile in sprint speed last year, even with the weight gain. He upped his line drive rate at least to 30.1%. There's still enough there that I can look at to say, look, there's potential. And if he just got back to his normal 17-28 year, which I think is absolutely attainable, he's a major bargain at 183. So he's a guy who I like to get. Again, outfielder, somebody who's going to add speed and has potential for more as, again, a huge prospect, and he's still pretty young. So he's a guy who I'm targeting in most of my drafts.
One of the best values on the board, I think, this year is Victor Robles in 5x5.
Yeah.
In those roto formats, you go back and look a year ago how aggressive everybody was at Victor Robles, right? Was he like a 6th-round pick, if memory serves, or something like that? We were like, oh, this is a 20-30 guy, and yeah, he's going to suffer in batting average. But you see what happens, a little bit of disappointment, and everybody just runs away. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that here in the show. We're going to run towards Victor Robles. We're going to hold our hands out, and we're going to take him with us for a jog so we can drop the extra 5 pounds, and Dan can stop shaming him for his quarantine weight. And we're going to go there, and we're going to bounce him back. I'm telling you, this is a risk worth taking. And there is risk. Dan's 100% right on some of those stats there. This is not for the faint of heart.
No.
But I'm telling you right now, this is a guy in a 5x5 that could be a league winner for you if he does get it right. And he is not Juan Soto. Okay, he was at one point regarded higher in that organization than Juan Soto, and that's something to remember. And not everybody has the trajectory of Juan Soto, and I think in a lot of ways, Dan, it's unfair that he is in this organization and gets compared to him still because he's not the same player. Nobody's Juan Soto except Juan Soto, and I love me some Juan Soto.
What creates a buying opportunity, Joe, before you move on, is the fact that you have these guys, and you mentioned it with Hoskins, and we can talk about it with Robles, as fantasy managers hate when they have huge expectations and they're let down.
I hate the letdown.
Hate it.
And they have to learn to love again.
I'm telling you, that is the biggest thing. Put aside your biases and understand that these are buying opportunities because, again, even with the crappy contact that we've seen from Robles his whole career, he can be a better fantasy player than he is a real player, and I think that he is going to be this year. So just wanted to put that about the way fantasy managers think about these prospects.
Is biases the proper plural? You're smarter
biases,
than I am.
That's how I say it. If I like to make up words. I don't know. I can do what I want.
Is it a word? I think it's a word. It sounds like a word.
There are more than one bias that people could have. And,
It's not bias-I, right?
No, it's not like octopus. Pie or whatever. Is that a word? Am I making?
I don't know.
Words? Go to your next guy. Move us on.
You already used it in a sentence, so I just wanted you to spell it. So I just all right. Next guy for me. We talked about corner infield being tricky, and one of the picks that I made in last night's mock that I was doing, Jeimer Candelario, who a few years ago looked like he was going to be a nice little player, and then the bottom dropped out in 2019. It was ugly. In fact, let's never talk about it again. Okay. Let's just pretend it's like a terrible trip that we were on, and we came back from it, and everyone just unpacks their suitcase, and we never talk about it. But Candelario is going at 213, and he had a wonderful season last year, very under the radar. And this is what happens with decent players, or I should say good players, not great players, on bad teams. They get completely disregarded in terms of ADP. And you know what? At 213, I think you could do worse in a deeper league with Candelario.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have strong feelings about this one.
You can't love it because it's a 200 pick. Nobody's going to love anything here. Right. This is a can he be a contributor? And I think the answer is yes.
So I didn't even know when I saw Candelario on your notes. I was like, I wonder where I even have him. I actually have him 245th, so I guess I disagree. But I will be honest that I have not given him all that much thought this year coming into it. I haven't done a lot of 15-teamers either. That's a lot of where you live. I'm mostly sticking 12-team. But regardless, he did have a great year last year. And the thing is about it is that it wasn't totally out of the blue because you're right. It's really just that the 2019 season was kind of out of the blue and that really fell off a cliff. And if you look at his 2018, it looked, very solid, very closer to what we saw last year. And the thing is, he's going to bat fourth, right? I assume in that lineup.
Somewhere in the middle. Right. I mean, he's going to be, here's the thing. He's going to be in an RBI spot. And the 872 OPS, if that even goes to 830, that's a great pick there. Yeah. It'll post 200. That's a dude that you can play. You can play him in utility spot. He qualifies at first. He qualifies at third. And that's the other thing, too. When you have guys like him, guys like Muncy, guys, like Kiner, Falafel, you can do all sorts of things where you can move guys around. And I think that becomes a very, very useful thing this season more than any, especially in those daily transaction leagues. Yeah. So that brings us to your last one and my last one. So let's do it.
Drew Smyly for me. He's a guy who's going 260th overall. I am 213. 15th. There is a lot of warts with Smiley, mainly that he is never healthy, right? But he did have a, cut.
This is true.
Even now, he's got a 4.13 ERA that's backed up entirely by his FIP and his xFIP and a 126 whip. That's over the course of his career, strikeout per inning. So he's not a bad pitcher. Now he goes to the Braves in the National League on a 1-year deal, and I think it was $11 million. So they're kind of a believer in what we saw last year, which wasn't much because he, again, got injured. But 5 starts and 26 and a third innings, huge strikeout rate, 37.8%, 3.42 ERA, 110 whip. And what we talk about, Joe, is do we buy things that we saw in 2020? How do we know? What do we go? If it comes with a meaningful change, I'm sort of willing to give it more credence. And that's what happened to me with Smiley. He upped his fastball velocity, his velocity overall, by like 2.5 miles per hour. And if you want to say, well, that's a short season, it's a small sample, that's fine. But the bottom line is the guy missed 2 years after having Tommy John surgery and then sort of was slow coming in. I don't think it's a fluke that he just sort of like went all out. I think it's that he is finally healthy with it. And he also made an arsenal change in that he relied way more on that curveball, which is a really, really good pitch, 22.4% swinging strike rate with it. So again, if he does have the added velocity, which again, this is somebody I want to monitor in spring training, but if he does show the added velocity that he had last year, and he does, again, lean into more of that curveball, which is a great pitch, I think he can make a major profit considering he's basically free in drafts at pick 260.
I love me some free squares. And
Yep.
Smiley's a good free square.
Yep.
All right, last one for me is another free square, 237. If you're playing in OBP leagues, this guy is a must. Okay, he happens to be a Met, and his name is Brandon Nimmo.
Yep.
Now, in 2018, he had 17 home runs, had a 404 on-base percentage, and an 886 OPS. Now, in 2019, things did not go well. Sophomore slump. You can call it whatever the hell you want. Sometimes the second year for full-time guys just isn't as good, right? He also had some injuries that year, too. So let's take that season and put it in its place, and now look at the short sample size of last year. Because in last year, guess what? That OBP was right back at what? 404 exactly. The OPS was at 888. That's only, 886 to 888. So this is really who Brandon Nimmo is. Now, the batting average might be a 260. It might be a 280 like it was last year. But anything in between is also fine. Because if he hits at the top of the order, he's going to score 90 runs in this lineup. On base percentage, guys, I'm telling you, whether this is a 5x5, whether this is OBP, or even a points league, Brandon Nimmo is just going to fill the stat sheet. And I'm telling you right now, he is just kind of grossly underappreciated. Everybody's talking about all the other guys. It's not a sexy pick, but it's one of these guys that's going to go out there and just be productive. And guys who get on base, make things happen, score runs. And at the end of the day, that's what baseball's about, scoring runs. That's going to have a positive impact. So finding those guys that score runs is actually pretty important as well. So don't discount a guy like Brandon Nimmo. So those are some fantastic values. We expect you to get all of them in your drafts. All of them, every single one, we expect you to get, or at least some. Try to get a few.
A few.
Just for us. And let us know which ones you got.
Yeah.
Let us know. Go tweet us at Dan Harris 80, at Joe Pisapia 17, and let us know how you're finding, or if these guys are finding their way onto some of your rosters.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, Dan Harris, a little game, a little fun thing we're going to do here at the end of the show, and maybe we'll play this with Mike Tagliere later in the week as well, which is a little fantasy or reality.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to talk about something, I'm going to make a statement, and then Dan and I are going to discuss if that statement that I've made is fantasy or reality. It's very simple. Can you do it, Stan? You feel good about this? Are you ready to play?
I'm terrified, but I'm ready. Let's go.
That is the exact right frame of mind. Terrified is where it is. So, let's start with number 1 here on fantasy or reality. In case you missed it, Wendy's Twitter handle is Enfuego. So basically, it was National Roast Me Day. So Wendy's like, hey, roast us. So the Tampa Rays said, go ahead, Wendy. Absolutely roast us. You could definitely roast us. Keep it spicy like your nugs. So Wendy said, we'll roast anybody. So the Rays stepped up to the plate. And Wendy's, the fast food chain, replied on Twitter, we're surprised you didn't pull your social media manager in the middle of writing that great tweet. That, my friends, is a mic drop tweet. Wendy's is known for some of these. I don't know who runs this. It might be Dan Harris actually running this account, possibly.
Great. Yes.
So, obviously, this is pretty good. So, I'm going to make a statement here. Wendy's Twitter account is all-time great fantasy or reality.
Reality. This is not an anomaly, other than the fact that I love it when it's like you're not just roasting your competitors like Burger King or McDonald's, which they do perfectly, or
all the time. Yeah.
They roast customers who sort of tweet at them. It's great. But the fact that they are obviously, whoever runs that account is obviously in tune with baseball and knowing sort of what happens. Reality. One of the all-time greats. Love it. Fantastic for years.
I mean, unbelievable. And you know what? The tough part is I feel bad for the Rays because, I mean, this is what they did all year long was they took guys out. Now, again, I wouldn't do that in the World Series. I just wouldn't because the World Series is a different animal.
Yeah.
But how do you argue with Kevin Cash? Like, this is what they did. True. It worked in this regular season. It worked basically in the playoffs. But when you get to games 6 and 7 in the World Series, like, you just got to roll with what's working, and there's a feel for it. And I think that's the thing where it's, I don't want to say ruining baseball, but it's ruining baseball. There's a certain amount of human factor that we keep losing every year that I wish we had a little bit more of. The Tommy Lasorda, Don Zimmer, of course, feel for the game kind of stuff. Yeah. And this is 100% reality. I follow Wendy's on Twitter just because of things like this. It is hilarious. I'm a Frosty fan too. You a Frosty guy?
No, my wife eats more ice cream than any normal human ever should.
I don't even know if it's ice cream. I'm not even sure what a Frosty
That's true.
is,
Whatever it is.
I don't think I want to know.
If we can't do anything that resembles ice cream other than Dairy Queen, otherwise she will just leave us.
Dairy Queen is fantastic.
That's all. I mean, everybody. If
we have a local place by me called Super Sundays, also fantastic. Support your local ice cream places.
Correct.
But I do like a Frosty on occasion.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Put that out there.
That's fair.
All right. Number 2, fantasy reality. Spring training is too long. You know what, Dan? Every time, we're all excited for spring training. It's February. Like right now, it is snowing again outside my window in New Jersey. I've already shoveled once before the show. I'm going to have to shovel again after it. I feel like by the time we get to like a month from now, we are kind of whining and moaning about oh my God, why isn't the season here already? Why are we still doing this? Fantasy or reality, spring training is too long.
I'm going to go personally with fantasy, and the reason being that I am in the Northeast, as you almost are a little bit, but I'm really in the Northeast, and man, when the games start,
you're in the North.
I'm in like the tundra.
I'm in the Northeast. Yeah.
When it starts, especially for the Red Sox, like I don't even want to go sit and watch a baseball game, and it pains me to watch players play a baseball game in the freezing temperatures. And so at the same time, I want as much baseball as possible. Like I will watch spring training games. So starting it early, but I wouldn't want to start the season that early because it's hard to watch baseball in the freezing cold. So basically I'm fine with the way it is. I get super excited in the middle. I need something to get me through February. And the fact that pitchers and catchers just reported, that will get me there. So I'm fine with it as is. I'll go with fantasy.
All right, last one here. I saw this on the news this morning, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And it sent shockwaves through me, so I had to ask you this question. So apparently, whoever the owner is of the Buffalo Bill House. Now, again, this is going back to one of the great movies of all time, Silence of the Lambs. If you've never seen Silence of the Lambs, this weekend, go watch it. It is stunningly good. It's one of the few films that has ever had the sweep of the Oscars where it won actor, actress, it won Best Picture, it won Best Screenplay, it won Best Director. It swept the big 5. Right?
I love that you know that. I know you're obviously an actor, but now this is why. This is why you're
here. But, I think there's only like 3 or 4 films to ever do that in the history of the Academy Awards. So it's one of the great movies of all time. Buffalo Bill, incredibly creepy character, incredibly well played. But apparently they have changed Bill's house into a B&B where you can stay at it overnight, and I guess there's Silence of the Lambs themed things about this, which I don't know. I think it's uncomfortable, but before I judge it, I want to put it out there for everybody. Fantasy reality, Dan Harris, you would stay at the Buffalo Bill B&B.
There could not be anything more reality to that. I want them to have things of like, you can't open this door unless you put the lotion in the basket, right? Or something like that. Or there's like this little dog like going around there sort of doing
it has to have a dog. It has to have that little dog.
Randomly the lights cut out and you can only see with like night vision goggles, all like these little trinkets from the movie. That is reality to the nth degree. I'm all about it for sure.
Well, now I know a little bit more about my co-host here on Fantasy Pros. I'm going to say fantasy. I'm not going there.
Boo.
No. Not doing this. I think it's great that you have the guts to do it. I'm not.
I'm going right now. Right when we're done with this, I'm going to go book my
God
appointment.
knows what the evening entertainment is like at that place, too. Let's just say, it's got a lot of robes.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. But yeah, the only thing is you're right, though. I would think that whatever toiletries were given to you when you stay there, they are dropped in a basket. Like they just
it has to be. Right? Has to be without
question. It kind of feels like that's what it would be. All right. We want to make sure that if you enjoyed the program, once again, give us a review, give us a 5-star rating if you have the time, and take that review. Don't forget, tie it back in. go over, hit us up there, Pristine Auction. Again, you have that thing there where you can go and get that Manny Machado jersey we talked about earlier. So once again, go out there and check out our YouTube channel for baseball too on Fantasy Pros while you're at it. This has been one of many between Dan Harris and myself, and I cannot wait because this is where we're starting, and I hope you guys enjoyed the program today. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Dan Harris, I'm Joe Pisapia. We'll see you next time, kids.
Looking for useful content, fantasy-relevant information, and the data that can help your team win? Make sure to subscribe to our Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. And while you're at it, don't forget to follow us over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Fantasy Pros, so you get all the information you need to dominate your leagues all season long.